some of the top things that I find on telehealth patient labs of people that have bloating and digestive problems would be SIBO. There's bacteria growing into the small intestines where it shouldn't be. It's kind of weeds overgrowing in this gut garden from the large intestine into the small intestine, which is then fermenting these fermentable sugars in the small intestine. It's the leading cause of IBS. And people say, I look 9 months pregnant, but I'm not pregnant. I can drink water and I'm bloating. It's probably SIBO. And labs would pinpoint, is it SIBO or not? SIBO doesn't happen in a vacuum though. We have to look at that vagus nerve component. We have to look at the gut-brain axis, but we also have to look what could be decreasing that migrating motor complex. What could be decreasing that gut-brain communication? So that's things like chronic stress, unresolved trauma, and environmental toxins.
Welcome to the Vibrant Wellness Podcast. I'm your host today, Dr. Brooke Stubbs. I'm sitting down with Dr. Will Cole, a globally recognized functional medicine expert, clinician, and a 4-time New York Times bestselling author, a thought leader in the longevity and health optimization space. Dr. Cole, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.
Oh my goodness, the pleasure's mine.
Okay, well, let's dive right in.
Okay.
I heard about you probably, 5 years ago. 6 years ago, when I was just getting into this integrative health space.
Amazing.
My background is more Western medicine, but one of the things you focus on heavily that is a topic I love is gut and the gut and gut health and the gut microbiome and the connection between the brain and the gut. So let's start. Why is the gut so important to our health?
It's profoundly important. And I think it's important for people to realize, whether they're the layperson that's listening to this or a physician, practitioner that's listening to this, people don't necessarily have to have overt digestive symptoms to have underlying gut components to why they feel the way that they do. Hippocrates knew this thousands of years ago. Somehow he didn't have randomized control trials, but that's why he's the father of medicine and I'm not. But he anecdotally, all these founders of modern Paracelsus talked about this as well. He said all disease begins in the gut, and now research is catching up with antiquity. The majority of health problems, at least to some degree, have a gut component, have a microbiome, gastrointestinal system component to some degree. So what's going on here? The gut and brain are formed from the same fetal tissue. So when babies are growing in their mother's womb, the gut and brain are formed from that same fetal tissue, and they're inextricably woven together through the rest of our life through what's known in the research as the gut-brain axis, or the connection between the gut and the brain. If you think about it, even the way that it looks physiologically, anatomically, the gut even kind of resembles the brain too. 95% of serotonin is made in the gut, stored in the gut. 50% of dopamine, or pleasure neurotransmitter, made in the gut, stored in the gut. They work upon, like, the mechanism of action, I thought is interesting. They don't seem to pass through the blood-brain barrier, these neurotransmitters that are made in the gut, but they crosstalk through the vagus nerve, that largest cranial nerve in the body that's needed for resting, digesting, that parasympathetic aspect of the nervous system. That's that main thorough line that connects and innervates, communicates between the gut and the brain and the brain and the gut, this bidirectional relationship. It's profound, but also the gut is home to 75% of the immune system. So inflammation is a product of the immune system. I mean, it's ubiquitous. I mean, the inflammation is the commonality between pretty much any health problem. So to understand inflammation, you have to understand where 2/3 of the immune system resides, which is in the gut. So there's a lot of far-reaching implications to why, when you look at mental health issues, inflammatory problems, I mean, that's autoimmune problems, metabolic issues, pretty much every health problem under the sun, there's a lot of downstream effects that the gut can play. So as a physician, as a clinician, anybody that looks at labs, and even as a layperson, for you to be empowered about your own body, which you should be the one that's advocating for all of this, as you know, we have to be our own health advocates.
Absolutely.
And all of this is dependent on understanding where our gut microbiome health is at. It's really important. We live in such a blessed time where we have access to data where we actually can learn about our health and do something about it.
So you give us so much knowledge right there. I want to go back to the first thing you said, that you don't have to have these overt symptoms for there to be an issue. So in your practice, how do you nail down those issues for your patients?
Well, health, it's the unsexy part. The unsexy part is health history, and really, it's boring, but I don't find it boring. But when you say health history, I wish there was we need to rebrand health history.
Right.
It's like immersive finding out of somebody's health journey. Like what's the ineffable parts? What are the parts that haven't been talked out before? It's like a Sherlock Holmes like deep dive when you're looking at somebody's health through the lens of functional medicine. So it's my favorite part, because it's like, what are the proverbial stones that may have something underneath it? We don't necessarily know what will be underneath it, which is why we're running the labs, but we have a good idea that these could be a possibility at least, and we want to rule it out or rule it in. So yeah, health history begins with just a really digging deep of, we go back to birth.
Right.
How are they born? Vaginally or C-section? Were they breastfed or not breastfed? What was their childhood like? We're really looking at these things, and people oftentimes, if they don't know what we do in functional medicine, they'll ask me on the initial telehealth consult, they'll say, why are you asking these questions? Like, it's almost like part therapist. This one older gentleman said, are you in the KGB? Why do you want to know all this stuff? I'm not in the KGB, but I want to look at areas that when the outer third of your eyebrows are thinning, I'm not just asking it because I'm into eyebrows. I want to know, is it a clinical pearl to the thyroid being off? So these sort of, to the layperson, may seem, out of why are you asking? It's completely irrelevant. It's not irrelevant. Right. The body's interconnected. So health history really determines what labs are the most relevant for that person. Yeah.
And it's something as simple as, have you been delivered by a C-section or through the vaginal canal, can really change that microbiome. And maybe it takes a brain like yours. When I was looking up all the things that you are expert in, you have this whole big picture of the body, and putting all those pieces together through health history. Then what is the next step? Do you go straight to labs? Do you try some modalities in terms of lifestyle? What's next?
This is good. Like, two people that get people healthy for a living. This is the debate. This is the debate within our space.
Right.
Because I'm a massive advocate for diagnostics, because I've seen it change people's lives. A few reasons why.
We want to know all the reasons. I want case reports.
The backstory tea on labs. Because I've seen and heard just about everything. In 15, 16 years of telehealth, you've seen it all. I've seen everything. So the argument for appropriate thorough labs is it's needed to figure out and to develop protocols. I'm not going to run superfluous labs. I don't want to run labs that aren't going to change the protocol. I want to run labs that are going to determine the protocol, and we can compare and contrast apples to apples over time. And if we're doing what we're doing objectively, we need to be seeing that data improve. And then subjectively, obviously, the person's going to be feeling better if we're doing what we're doing, like improvement of their symptoms. So just as long as the clinician is doing a proper health history and is being thoughtful with the labs and not just running labs for the sake of it, like, are these labs going to be needle movers for that person? I think is powerful and helpful from a clinician standpoint, because you can track your progress over time. But simultaneously, it's really helpful for the person, because these are people that a lot of them have been medically gaslit. A lot of them have been told they're crazy, you're just getting older, you're just depressed, take this antidepressant, you're just stressed out. These well-intentioned, reasons maybe, but they're not really given any answers. And they know intuitively something's off here. I knew I should have trusted my gut. That's typically what they say whenever we run the labs. Yeah, right. Bad pun when you're talking to us. But it's something that's this aha moment for them. I knew it. And and oftentimes their spouses, God bless them, sometimes they don't get it, right? Even their spouse can unintentionally gaslight them. You're just a hypochondriac. There's nothing wrong with you. But then when the labs, it's a learning moment. It's a self-compassion, self-forgiveness moment for the person sometimes, and a relief okay, I don't have to shoot in the dark anymore. I know I have a path. So it's cathartic. Labs are cathartic for the person that's been gaslit for so long. And it's healing for their support system to get their aha moment. Oh, look, they're not crazy. They just weren't, they were looking, it'd be like me losing my keys out in the parking lot and me looking in my office all day long.
Right.
I'm not going to know where my keys are at. They're not looking at these factors in conventional medicine because they're trained to diagnose the disease and match it with a pharmaceutical.
Yeah.
So it's superfluous from a conventional medicine standpoint, but it is really needed for us. So that's my argument for labs.
Right.
Now, with that said, the caveat is there are some labs that you don't need all the labs under the sun to start moving and improving somebody's life.
Okay.
And I think that's where the paralysis of analysis can come in. And there's sort of both and not either or. Like start making movement. But if somebody from a cost standpoint or an accessibility standpoint, affordability standpoint, can't get all the labs, I'm a pragmatist. So I would rather say, what data can we get? What's realistic? What do you have access to? Let's make it work for you. But be a pragmatist and not try to push that square peg through a round hole and say, well, you need all these labs, you can't move forward. So let's be thoughtful. And I think that's sort of the science and art of wellness, to be okay with like, yes, I love data. I want to see the data improve. I love it. But sometimes that can be a limiting reagent to some people to say, well, I getting healthy isn't for me then because I don't have access to all these labs. So I think there's sometimes you have to make compromises from a clinical standpoint.
So let's go back to the point about conventional medicine and it's not pragmatic for them to run all these labs. Speak to the person who goes through that whole rigmarole of going through conventional medicine and getting shoved aside. I think my eyes have recently been open to just the depth of data we can collect and how we can look at the gut microbiome and we can look at food sensitivities. I mean, among other things, we're just speaking about the gut right now, but we really can get really in the nitty gritty of metabolites and things like that. Tell me, or is there a case that you can recall where those things on the surface for a patient weren't really there when they were in a conventional medicine setting, but you really helped direct their focus after bringing more light to maybe the underlying things that aren't normally tested?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's so many things. I mean, there is a proverbial sea of people going through what the world would call mystery illnesses, or it looks autoimmune, looks inflammatory, but they're not really checking all the boxes. There's somewhere on this autoimmune inflammation spectrum. And to break it down for people, like researchers estimate it's about 4 to 10 years prior to somebody's diagnosis that things are brewing on this spectrum for most people. So when you're talking about autoimmune conditions, that's over 50 million Americans, millions more worldwide. And it's things like Hashimoto's disease or autoimmune thyroiditis, rheumatoid arthritis, Sjogren's, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, celiac disease. I think I mentioned some of the more common ones. So that's the diagnosable ones. But you're talking about 4 to 10. We don't have numbers on this. We don't have numbers for the hundreds of millions of people or more that are somewhere on this continuum, because we're seeing it more and more. Kids, adolescents, young people that have these mystery illnesses or symptoms that are just inflammatory in nature, that they're not checking all the boxes. There's not a diagnosis code for them. They're just struggling. They're living suboptimally. They're living an inflammatory life. So there are so many examples that I have for people that they're going and getting the labs. Most of our telehealth patients, before they meet me, they are model conventional medicine patients. They're going to their doctor's visits. They want answers. They're advocating for themselves. They're being collaborative with their physician. But it's not an indictment against any conventionally trained medical doctor within that system. It is a system issue, not a physician issue. So the doctor's trained to do what they're doing. It's like going to a gardener expecting mechanic advice or something. You know what I mean? It's like, it's a completely different system. It's changing. I've seen a lot change over the past 15 years.
Right.
When I used to talk about gut health, or I remember it was reversing type 2 diabetes 15 to 16 years ago, I would get so many calls saying I was going to go to hell for telling people it could reverse type 2 diabetes. You were born with it. There's nothing you could do. No, I don't know any conventional doctor that would say that now.
Right.
Because there's so much greater awareness. So type 2 diabetes hasn't changed in 15 years. The populace has changed. Mm-hmm. The democratization of this information has changed.
Right.
So even if the physician, the conventional physician, even if they're not trained in functional medicine, what I hear from them and our telehealth patients is whatever you're doing, keep on doing it. Because the labs are improving, their lives are improving. It's really not up for debate. Mm-hmm. It's just good. There's just a lot of things when you look at things like brain fog, fatigue, digestive problems, mental health issues, hormonal problems. They're just looking at the check engine light. Uh-huh. They know the check engine light's on, but no one's looking under the dang hood.
Okay.
They're just giving different check engine light cover-upper stickers and saying, see you later, see you in 6 months.
Right. And then when you speak to the patients that you have where the feasibility, the finances aren't there in order to run these deeper labs, what are some baseline foundational things that you tell most patients? Maybe it's going to be individualized for everyone.
Yeah.
That you say that they can go home and we could see how this works for them in a couple weeks, a couple months.
Yeah, and that's the other side of the coin, right? That's the okay. Now they hear someone like me or you talk about labs and they think I can't do anything. Well, I want to first say there's a lot of great labs out there like Vibrant Wellness where they're not expensive. People don't realize we spend so much money in our culture today on materialistic junk. People don't flinch about the latest iPhone or all the streaming services. Going out and eating out junk food that doesn't love you back, drinking alcohol, going on vacations, all this stuff. But in the United States, I am kind of a fierce advocate for our industry and for labs because oftentimes in the United States, it's not a price problem, it's a priority problem. We value materialistic junk. We don't value our health. So I want to be clear on that I don't want to make too many big excuses for people that are like, I can't afford to get healthy because I want to see what you spend your money on because that's where your priorities lie.
Okay.
But with that said, I may be ruffling some feathers right now. Sorry, guys. But
Ruffle them up.
With that said, there are people that there is an access issue. So I have a heart for them and a passion for people that are really want it but can't. So that's complete compassion and empathy. I just think that when you look on social media and the complainers on social media, they're complaining in the comment section from their $1,000 phone with all their spare time. Please give me a break. But with that said, I would say here's just some things you can do right out of the gate. And that's why I write my books. That's why I write articles with all the links to PubMed. I have there's so much free stuff people can do. An elimination diet is a great tool where you don't need all the fancy labs necessarily. Mm-hmm. You may need the fancy labs once you've tried the elimination diet and you are better off than you were, but you are stuck at a plateau. That's typically where I'm meeting people. Right. It's they've done some of the basic stuff, but they're still spinning their wheels. So let's talk about it. Right out of the gate, if you're saying if I don't need, let's start without labs. What can I do to start moving my health in the positive direction? What I call the Inflammatory Core Four. These are 4 foods or 4 food ingredients that I would say are the most likely to cause inflammation. And we can talk about, if you want, the context and nuance of this because there are better for you options to everything I'm about to say. Okay. But I would say number 1 would be gluten-containing grains. Wheat, rye, barley, spelt, oats, cross-contaminated. The question is it the wheat or what we've done to the wheat?
Yes, that's the big question for me.
That's the big question, right.
What do you think? I want to know.
I think it's more what we've done to it. I think a lot of what we're going to talk about over these Inflammatory Core 4, and there's a +1 if I could add that. I don't have a rhyming name for 5. I need to think about that. But it's when mankind pretends to be God, there's unintended consequences and sometimes intended consequences. So we've hybridized and genetically modified grains, depending on what grain you're talking about. We've sprayed it with herbicides and pesticides. We've processed it. We're not properly preparing it, soaking it and sprouting it and fermenting it. It's a food that was stored well during times of famine historically. So now we're feasting on a famine food year round and spraying it and hybridizing it and not properly preparing it. So it's a combination of like an entourage effect of why this is pissing the body off so badly. But it's what researchers would call an evolutionary mismatch, or ancestral mismatch, or a genetic epigenetic mismatch, that the wheat we are consuming today is not what our body's physiology and the microbiome, which we are symbiotically connected to, we are adapted to. So it's triggering these latent genetic predispositions that have been around for thousands of years. Most of our genes haven't changed in over 10,000 years. But what has changed is this epigenetic mismatch, this chasm between our world and us. So this is our biochemistry, our physiology, and the microbiome is living in a brave new world in many ways. So gluten's a big assaulter of that because of what we've done to the grain supply and the overconsumption of it. Number 2 would be industrial seed oils, which is probably the most controversial one. People get really up in arms about it, but I think there's something there, and I think we have to look at the context and nuance and not overstate it, not be hyperbolic about it, but things like canola oil, vegetable oil, soybean oil, these are in a lot of ultra-processed foods. So it's a combination effect. I don't think it's just one thing, but they're also high in omega-6. The modern Western diet is very pro omega-6, not enough long-chain omega-3s. So it's that ratio of polyunsaturated fatty acids. If it was a small amount of organic cold-pressed sunflower oil, that's not the devil.
Right.
The problem is we're over-consuming these things in high amounts and not having high omega-3s in our diet from whole food sources. And they're beyond the omega-6 content. They're chemically extracted. They're very delicate to light and heat, so they could be oxidized. There's a lot of problematic components to why industrial seed oils would be bad. I just think you have polar opposites on this argument, right? You have the people that are like the fear mongers around seed oils that are like, you're going to die if you have that sunflower oil and it's creating orthorexia. And then you have the people that are like the conventional, like, no, canola oil, they're going to die on the canola oil hill still in 2025 and 2026. They love it. And they love it even more that people hate it. They want to guzzle that. They want to bathe in canola oil.
I have not seen those people, but
they're there.
If I stay here long enough,
especially because the Maha movement is like talking about seed oils. They hate it even. They love the canola oil even more.
Right.
They love it. They didn't even think about it before. Now they really love it. His third would be added sugar. That's not a surprise to people, but it's even the nicer sounding euphemisms for sugar, like the agave nectars of the world, which it's still high in fructose, but it's so well marketed, like someone's squeezing the agave in that cup and it's just so greenwashed, right? It's so natural looking, but it's still high in fructose and it doesn't have fiber in its whole food source. I'm not saying you can't have agave nectar. I just had some in a drink yesterday, but we should be mindful of the grams of added sugar we're consuming in a day. And then fourth would be conventional dairy. It would be, again, what we've done to dairy, not dairy itself, because grass-fed, A2, cultured fermented cheeses and kefirs and yogurts are really wonderful and healing, actually. But it's what we've done to it again. We've homogenized it, pasteurized it, we've fed it grain instead of grass. I mean, it's this mismatch again. So that's the inflammatory core 4. If the person that's watching this or listening to this had less of those or got the better for you options for all of those, could you imagine the chronic disease epidemic? Like it would dramatically shrink just from that alone. And that's a strong statement, but it's true.
No, and it gives me chills as you say that because you're so right. Absolutely.
It's a powerful modulator. I'm not saying it's going to cause solve all the problems, but it's going to solve a lot of the problems because you look at the amount of people that don't know much about health. They're not doing any of what I just said. And those are the people that there's actually so much grace because their body is so inflamed. They have these super simple things that when you make this swap, the body wants to heal. The body wants to get better. And that's why we have to get this information out there because this stuff isn't for the wealthy. These are easy swaps can make. I mean, I'm from the Rust Belt of Pennsylvania. I'm from rural, like food desert area. I don't want to hear any excuses that this is just for the wealthy. It's not, believe me. I can get all this stuff at Aldi, at Costco, at Sam's Club, at Walmart, at food co-ops. You can do it. Again, that's just more excuses that we're kind of this victim mentality that a lot of Americans have because it keeps us in this sort of mental enslavement to being subject to the sick care system. That's kind of a strong statement, but it in many ways is true. So I think that's a massive shift that people could have, that every meal they have, their next meal is another opportunity to feed health or feed health problems.
Right.
There's no neutral food. There's no Switzerland meal that's doing nothing for your physiology. That doesn't mean you have to be perfect, but that does mean that you have a responsibility for yourself and your family. And the plus one is alcohol. And the safest amount of alcohol is none. There's no healthy amount of alcohol. There are pragmatically, I'm a pragmatist, pragmatically better for you options, and we can talk about it. But let's not sugarcoat it or make greenwash it into something it's not. Look, I'm coming from someone who I do not drink alcohol, but I do leave open the door of a possibility of a low dose hormetic effect. Mm-hmm. I'm interested of that.
Okay.
I think more studies need to be done. But if someone's low dose stressing their body out, like ice, cold plunging therapy or saunas or high intensity interval training or whatever, a lot of mechanism of action has to do with hormesis, which is interesting. So maybe there's room for that. But it's because it's stressful to the body. It's not some random polyphenol content. Resveratrol, people always bring up the resveratrol. There's better ways to get resveratrol. Please don't. Please don't. Most of that research was funded by the alcohol industry, and it was very well done.
I mean, that was smart of them.
Very, yes. Yeah. I mean, some redemptive quality. Come on. But there's better ways to get resveratrol without neurotoxins involved. And that's just the nature of and research shows even small to moderate amount of alcohol consistently, not if someone drinks once and never again. I'm talking if someone drinks consistently small to moderate amounts, there is a growing body of evidence that shows it's associated with smaller brain size, which impacts mood and cognitive function as we age. It's linked to digestive problems, increased intestinal permeability, SIBO, so many bloating and digestive problems. The body is trying to heal, because most of the people that I'm talking to, they are eating better than most Americans are, but they're still keeping alcohol in on a consistent basis, and even in small to moderate amounts. And their body's never given the time to repair. Yeah. And it's
that inflammation spectrum. You got to fit it in the core four, 4.5.
4.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. Stay 5 to stay alive.
5 to stay alive.
That's what I'm going to rebrand.
Okay. But I think one argument, and I love Dan Buettner. I love all of his work. The blue zones, these people ate, very healthy. They had great agricultural lifestyles, very little toxins in their world. They made their own alcohol and they drank wine most nights of the week. And so people could look to that and say, well, if they did it, it's probably healthy, but probably suboptimal products that we eat, probably suboptimal lifestyle, or maybe it was just as toxic to them, but they were doing enough good things for their bodies that we didn't see. Maybe they would have lived to 120 if they weren't drinking alcohol.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, and look, I'm not advocating for some teetotaling, puritanical, zealot, boring life. I just think there's so many amazing mocktails and neurotropics and functional beverages out there where you could have that sort of unwinding ritual aspect, that hedonistic, enjoyable, I want to unwind with my friends, the social aspect of it. There are amazing options for people. You do not have to be boring and believe me, you can live in because this is the whole paradigm shift I want people to have. Continuing to have something that doesn't love you back isn't restrictive to avoid that. Right? It's self-respect.
Yes.
It is no, I love feeling great more than I want something that doesn't love me back. And no one, everybody that's listening to this right now, if they were really honest with themselves, they would know, I don't feel good when I have that drink, even that small amount. I don't feel good. It does not love me back. And now you can make an educated choice and say, I know it's not going to make me feel good. And then fine, then have the drink.
Have the drink if you want.
Be empowered.
You're talking to me right now.
But I want to make informed choices and be proactive and not reactive, and maybe get some activated charcoal, maybe get some glutathione. There's these, they're actually genetically modified probiotics, but They're not like bad GMO. They just tinkered with to be better at breaking down the toxic byproduct of alcohol. So there are a lot of like quote unquote hacks that if you're going to drink pragmatically, I set our telehealth patients up for success if they're going to do it. But we have to circumvent the alcohol. It is not healthy.
Let's talk about the inflammation spectrum just a little bit, because in my mind, inflammation is a fire. When it's brewing, you just throw a little bit of kenolene, like that seed oil or that, that pasteurized milk on it, that it's just going to keep brewing. And then you have to go kind of cold turkey, so to speak, with all these inflammatory triggers, I should say, in order to really bring it down to zero. Is that what you teach?
Yeah. So subdiagnostically, if we don't have the data, like this is a good example. It's like if someone has pending labs, I want to treat other people the way that I want to be treated. So in my mind is like, okay, if we're waiting on labs, you could be really like N of 1 experiment, mitigate variables, and don't start anything until you get that lab data back yet. And I give people that's their body. They could do what they want. But if I know enough of their health history, why would I wait? Even the best labs out there could take 2, 3, 4 weeks to get back to us. Even the quickest 1 week. If I wasn't feeling good, I would want to start feeling better like as soon as possible.
Right.
So yeah, I'm always encouraging people to do at least some form of a clinically appropriate elimination diet. There's so many ways to do an elimination diet. I mean, the carnivore diet can be used as an elimination diet. Paleo diet, AIP, Mediterranean. There's many forms of an elimination diet. And then we're getting people that have to be like lower FODMAP, lower oxalate, lower histamines, these sort of things that we don't have to get in the weeds in. But yes, some form of an elimination diet for a time. And none of them are meant to be forever and ever. Right. They're meant to kind of, again, like you said, calm that inflammatory response. And that gives us something to do and start creating a foundation of resilience while we're waiting for those labs to get back to us.
Okay, I have another question about the gut, and then I want to move on to what you mentioned, the vagus nerve. But in the gut, one of the biggest complaints I get, especially in women, I feel like, bloating. What's bloating? What are the predecessors to feeling bloated?
Oh my gosh, I'm glad you brought this up, because it we need to debloat America, because it's a problem. It is a massive issue. I mean, it's even hashtags on social media. What was it? Hot girl tummy issues?
Oh no.
That's what it is.
I love
Hot girl tummy issues. Okay. Something like that. Don't quote me on that. But it's something like that. And then
we're all in this together, really.
Right. And then I talked about it once, and then people were like, you're being such a chauvinist saying hot. I didn't come up with the hashtag. I'm repeating what I saw on TikTok, that women are calling themselves that. And what I love about it is that they're normalizing something that there's so much stigma around it for everybody, most of all women, right? Because you can't talk about the bathroom, we can't talk about pooping. How could we do that? But it's important. And they're using social media in a way to give a voice to so many people that are struggling with digestive problems. Yeah, so bloating, chronic constipation, IBS issues, food sensitivity issues, they're very common, not normal. And what's going on here is, I mean, again, health history labs, everybody's different. So there's going to be a bio-individuality to this conversation. But I would say some of the top things that I find on telehealth patient labs of people that have bloating and digestive problems would be SIBO, small intestinal, should be no surprise to anybody that sees patients. So it's small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO. There's bacteria growing into the small intestines where it shouldn't be. It's kind of weeds overgrowing in this gut garden from the small intestine, from the large intestine into the small intestine, which is then fermenting these fermentable sugars in the small intestine. It's the leading cause of IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, IBS-C and D, uncomfortable bloating. People say, I look 9 months pregnant, but I'm not pregnant. I can look at food and I bloat, or I can drink water. I hear that a lot. I can drink water and I'm bloating. It's probably SIBO. And labs would pinpoint, is it SIBO or not? And then if it is SIBO, what type of SIBO? Is it hydrogen or methane or hydrogen sulfide? And then lastly, I would say is while determining SIBO is important, because it's an aha moment for the person, it's helpful for us to track change over time. SIBO doesn't happen in a vacuum, though. We have to look at that vagus nerve component. We have to look at the gut-brain axis. We have to look at what the nervous system and the vagal nerve health, but we also have to look what could be decreasing that migrating motor complex. What could be decreasing that gut-brain communication. So that's things like chronic stress, unresolved trauma, and environmental toxins. I see so many times where it's mycotoxins. These people have HLA gene variants, methylation homozygous gene variants, meaning their body is more prone to these biotoxin sensitivities. And they get exposed to mold or exposed to a virus or bacteria, and their immune system does not know how to calm down on its own. We can get it to calm down, but we have to look at that genetic epigenetic mismatch again. So again, you could just go and look at the SIBO and be like, okay, it's just the SIBO. But then these people that have struggled with SIBO protocols and not recovering from SIBO for years. And they're on Xifaxan and rifaximin and all these antibiotics, and they get better for a little bit and then they have a flare up and they're never like free from SIBO. And that's when we have to look at these more upstream issues like mycotoxins and chronic stress and unresolved trauma, or both of them, that are impeding that gut-brain axis. That's keeping, you could take all the antibiotics, whether they're pharmaceutical or herbal antimicrobials, and they may be a piece of the puzzle, but if you are living on antimicrobials for months on end, maybe we should look somewhere else.
Right.
And that's where these other variables come into play.
Yeah, I'm thinking of so many patients right now that, especially the ones that we end up putting on a GLP-1, and then that gut motility is slowed down and they're burping sulfur. That's the common complaint.
Yeah.
And there is a lot of time, that trauma component or chronic stress component. And so it's really the things that we do, you and I in our office, is not the same things they're going to get in conventional healthcare system, where we're really diving into those lifestyle factors. So let's talk about the vagus nerve. Tell me about the connection between the gut, the brain, chronic stress, cortisol, all the things.
The sympathetic, the fight or flight, freeze, fawn, that's not a bad thing, right? Humans wouldn't be here without it. But the problem is it's like a seesaw and it's always active in a lot of people. And that exists on a spectrum too. I mean, there's like subclinical, dysautonomia is what I'd call it, some sort of hypervigilance, some sort of sympathetic,
like just chronic
overactive.
Tone,
right, yeah. They're not dysautonomic, but they are somewhere on that spectrum, where they are wired and tired, anxious and exhausted. They're not going to check conventional medicine's boxes necessarily, but there's something going on with the neuroimmunoendocrine axis, like that intersection between the nervous system, the immune system, inflammation, and the endocrine system, their hormones. And if you're looking at the hormone test and things, you're going to find stuff, but they're maybe mild. But there's a whole continuum all the way up to dysautonomia, where it is that perpetual state of hypervigilance, right? And they can't calm down. And things like POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, which I'm seeing a lot of over the years, of these sort of biotoxins and things like COVID and even the COVID vaccine, just their immune system never calmed down after it. It's just those people, many people are fine with get COVID and they're fine. It's like a cold for them. And then some people got COVID, especially the earlier variants, and their immune system never calmed down. And it's that sort of genetic epigenetic mismatch again, that something's got to give. It's like that virus was the tipping point for them. And so what's the vagus nerve? It is the parasympathetic aspect of the nervous system. So if the sympathetic, think of it as like that tight muscle, that inflamed muscle, that's overactive muscle. That's the sympathetic. It's working out too much. The parasympathetic is weak and flabby. That resting, digesting, hormone balance, grounded, centered state of the nervous system is weak. So it sounds woo-woo when you talk about mindfulness and breath work and somatic practices and spiritual work. But it actually, largely what it's doing on a physiological level, those tools are training a weak vagus nerve.
And I'll go through those tools in my office. I'll teach people to really breathe into their diaphragm, flatten that, activate that vagus nerve, and send signals to the cells that they're safe, that they can return to optimal functioning, that they can release that tension they're holding on to chronically.
Yeah, diaphragmatic breathing, holotropic breath work, different types of breath work. The more you can do to get the whole abdominal area to be working is a great way. And there's different ways to do it. I mean, there's even transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulation. There's a lot of tools you can use. But I typically have telehealth patients pick something passive and something active. meaning that, okay, something active is going to be like that breath work, something you have to be consistent with, or that meditation or that grounding practice or that somatic practice. And then the people that tell me they're not good at it, those are people that typically need to do it the most. Like the people that suck at meditation, first of all, newsflash, we all suck at it. That's why it's called a practice. Yeah, right. But we need to get better at it. We need to tone a weak parasympathetic nervous system. And then something passive is a device, some wearable, some biohack that you don't have to just add to another thing to your to-do list. You can just do it while you're working, while you're habit stacking, other things that you're doing for wellness. So there's a lot of great transcutaneous vagal nerve stimulation devices out there that are like just working in the background. That could be a game changer for that calming, like sleep, REM and deep sleep, heart rate variability. So I think, but you have to show up to that work just as you would a workout. And it's going to the gym once and saying the gym didn't work for me. It doesn't work like that. And we can't say that for the gym. We can't say that for this somatic work as well.
And I want to go back to what you said about it's a practice. You need to do it like you're training in the gym, because what I find is people who have anxiety and they just have a panic attack, they want to jump right into meditation. That is the exact wrong time to try and meditate. It will not be helpful. It's the daily practice that helps you to get better, so that that threshold to be into that panic attack situation is much lower. Like you bring down your sympathetic nervous system.
You're so right. Because it's building resilience. All the stuff we're talking about is building resilience. And you have to tone over time. So if people, the gym analogy really works here, because most people know it's going to take time and consistency with the gym to sort of build that, whatever, that bicep or whatever muscle you're looking to see definition or strength with, right? That's what's happening on a nervous system level. You need to have time to have vagal tone.
Okay.
And look, it was supporting gut health, improving nutrition, lowering inflammation, dealing with these mycotoxins, mold toxins that I mentioned earlier. Everything that people are doing physiologically is also improving vagal tone. Like the lower your physiological stress is also improving vagal tone. So I don't want to make vagal tone just about mind body practices, which it is that too, but it's a both and.
And when you talk about kind of this chronic stress, is that cortisol all the time? Just kind of a subclinical, can't find it on labs. It's always circulating. It's breaking down the body. If we think about cortisol as the breakdown hormone.
Yeah, I see cortisol off a lot. I mean, it may be subtle.
Okay.
I give you that. It's not always extreme, violent, like circadian rhythm surges, but it's typically you're going to see it irregular to some degree. And cortisol is not inherently bad, right? Cortisol is an endogenous immunosuppressant. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. So if anything, cortisol on labs can tell a story. Because if cortisol is like a roller coaster or always high or even always low, it's telling a story. What's the context of that HPA axis, right? And then there's both physiological and psychological stressors to that too. And all of these labs, of course, are snapshots in time. You can't like necessarily want to hang your hat on this as being who you are forever and ever, amen. That's why retesting is so important to track data over time.
Right, absolutely. And then I think what people don't really understand is that steroidogenic pathway that creates cortisol is also connected to a plethora of other hormones in the body and can really throw off all of those numbers. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Because the body, back to that sort of neuroimmunoendocrine axis, I see that so many times, is that the body's, that sympathetic is overactive, the parasympathetic is underactive, the body is inflamed, hormones are taking a back burner. Cortisol may be up, maybe, but then chronic fatigue syndrome, a lot of the cases, the people, their cortisol actually really low. And then you have things like adrenaline, like overcompensating. They don't feel like their cortisol is low, but when you run it on a lab, it is oftentimes low for people with chronic fatigue syndrome and this sort of more chronically inflamed people. But yes, you're going to see all hormones in the tank typically, or a lot of them, at least suboptimal. Yeah. They're not going to be where you want to be, because that parasympathetic tone is needed for hormone health as well.
Okay. And I want to ask you about thyroid health in the same context, because you talk about labs in a snapshot. I feel, and I have found clinically, thyroid hormone, or TSH, is what we usually measure in my clinic, but you can give me more information about the labs you draw. It can be so variant based on just what's happening in your life at that one particular moment.
So true.
So then do you jump to, you've got you've got clinical hypothyroidism, or are we looking at following those labs and seeing if they progress? And how do you approach that with patients?
I love this question. So you're right. TSH is a great example of that, because you could run, not that I've done this, but you could run TSH like every hour for 24 hours and you're going to probably get different numbers.
Yeah.
But you really have to, that's why retesting is so important.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to go and make that someone's personality, that TSH at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday. It's like, what is it the next day or the next month? And what's the context of the rest of that thyroid panel and how they're feeling?
Mm-hmm.
So that's so important, especially for clinicians, because like, what's the old saying, like bedside manner? That's the thing, right? People don't realize
that's the saying.
That's the saying, right? That I don't know, right? But the thing is, doctors don't realize, or any practitioner don't realize the power of the word sometimes. And we throw these words around, and then they make it their identity.
Oh, yes.
Patients make it their identity. My doctor told me this, and they own it. Like they are an introvert and they have this thyroid problem, and it's like immutable.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is it is very mutable.
Okay.
It is very dynamic, and we want to look at the context of this over time. And there's many examples of that, not just the thyroid, of just people owning it, identifying with whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to be clear with your words and gentle with your words. TSH it's a neuroendocrine hormone, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
pituitary hormone, but so it's important. I love the TSH lab. We want to see it in the optimal range, which is about 0.45 to 2,
Mm-hmm.
which is a tighter interval within that larger reference range. Where it is the optimal TSH is going to be tighter in the functional range, not just the lab's reference range.
Mm-hmm.
My personal opinion is I wouldn't hang my hat on just a TSH because it's so dynamic.
Right.
And it's just one piece of the puzzle. So yes, we want to see what the neuroendocrine axis is doing with TSH. What's my brain saying to my thyroid? Yes, that's important. But then I want to look at the larger context of the production. So total T4, total T3, free T3, free T4. So like the body's making T4, and then 80% of that or something around there is converting T4 to T3 in the liver. And then we have to look at the gut, converting a good percentage of it as well. So to understand thyroid health, you also have to understand liver health and gut health in this standpoint too. Another reason why gut health is so important is impacting, if you have thyroid issues, maybe it's the gut component of conversion and the autoimmune component for people. And then thyroid antibodies are really important. So TPO and TGA, thyroid peroxidase and thyroid globulin antibody, thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin for Graves' disease. So looking at Hashimoto's and Graves', these sort of autoimmune thyroid issues, is the immune system attacking the thyroid? Is that why it's an issue? And then reverse T3. So like the sort of the thyroid braking system. Like I see a lot of people that are inflamed, their brakes are high, their reverse T3 is high, and their gasoline, their T3 is low. So is it a brake gasoline ratio issue? Or, so the whole point being is there's a lot of nuance and context to the thyroid. Is it over and under conversion? Is it an autoimmune condition? Is it hypothyroidism secondary to pituitary hypofunction, which is like that neuroendocrine axis, which this is an interesting phenomenon where you'll see normal to low TSH.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks normal, or it can even look hyperthyroid.
Uh-huh.
And then you do a full T4, T3, free T3, free T4, and you'll see them all low. So it's the brain isn't speaking to the thyroid.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't the majority of people, but it is a subset of people that fall through the cracks.
Uh-huh.
And those are the people I typically see. It's these autoimmune, it's these underconverters, it's these neuroendocrine axis issues, it is high reverse T3. And all of these thyroid problems are important because every cell of your body has a thyroid receptor site.
Uh-huh.
It's going to impact so many different systems of your body. But that's why testing, again, is so important here.
Uh-huh.
The TSH is a starting point, but then if someone's like, okay, I still feel off here, then what else is going on?
Okay.
Because as I mentioned earlier with the gut, thyroid issues don't happen in a vacuum. Like even those hormones we talked about earlier, like cortisol could be impacting the thyroid hormone. The body's interconnected. So it's important to not be so myopic. And it's easy as clinicians for us all as humans to be myopic and say, like, what's that saying? Like, if all I have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Absolutely.
I think that happens to a lot of clinicians because they're like, it worked for me or it worked for this so-and-so person 10 years ago. We have to say intellectually agile because there's a lot of bioindividuality out there.
Right. And I think we could say it's a whole body problem. We want to look at all these gut-brain axis, but they're also interconnected and they interplay with each other in such a beautiful fashion that, you can fix one and still have a derangement in another.
Totally.
Speaking of other things, so when we talk about sex hormones, there's, like you said, there's thyroid hormone receptors in all the organs. Similarly, for women, there's estrogen receptors in all of them, the cells in the body too. So anything from brain health to bone health to joint aches can be affected by hormones. And how do you approach that with your female patients?
Yeah, well, it depends on the context of it, right? I think that there's a few things that are at play here. The way that I see hormonal imbalances is that hormones are biochemical emails that applies to estrogen, progesterone, cortisol. It applies to thyroid levels. Why? My first question is, okay, if the emails are being sent too much or not enough or in imbalanced ways, like why the heck is the brain screaming at the endocrine system like that? What's the context of it?
Right.
Because is it a neuroendocrine axis issue? Is it a metabolic issue? Is it an environmental toxin issue? Is there something that's causing emails being sent in a very inappropriate manner?
Pattern, yeah.
So that's where I would say is the health history in the labs are so important because it does no good. Like, for example, if I saw someone with mold toxins and environmental toxin issues, so let's just say they're in their 20s, 30s, you run the hormone tests and they're all low. You could give them hormone replacement therapy until the cows came home.
Right.
And they're probably not going to feel any different, or there'll be a honeymoon period with the HRT, and then they'll not feel good in the long term. It'll kind of wear off. So you have to deal with, like, I'm not making everything about mycotoxins, but my point is, like, that's an example. Root cause, whatever it is. Right. And it's probably going to be a combination of things. Okay. It could be chronic stress, unresolved trauma. It could be whatever it is. That's why health history and labs are so important, because you could go and I want to make that estrogen look pretty on a piece of paper or a PDF. But it's like, it's not going to matter because you really have to look at the context of it. So yes, there's a place for HRT. I think bioidentical hormone replacement therapy, I think, is really great for people who need it. Right. But it's normally going to be a piece of the puzzle and not like the first step is like, now if someone's postmenopausal, like that's a different story. If it's pretty straightforward, there are straightforward cases, but there's a lot of not straightforward cases out there.
So I have some rapid fire questions for you just to end off. What's worse? Refined sugars or alcohol? Equivocal, huh?
Yeah, I would say how much are we drinking or eating of both matters. Right? The dose makes the poison.
Okay, I like that answer. Yeah. Okay, what's your favorite functional drink?
There's a lot of ones out there. Kin Euphorics.
Okay.
Which she's based here, I think. She's based in, they're great. I've had the founders on my podcast. Kin Euphorics, great. I just talked to the founders of OHO. Okay. They're like microdose THC, CBD, CBG, like hemp-derived compounds, but microdosed of it. Seltzers are really good. There's a few. Yeah, I would say Kin and OHO are the ones that come to mind.
Okay. Favorite supplement?
For me personally? Wow. Magnesium.
Yeah. Pretty good one. Yeah. Does a lot of good things. Yeah. Okay. What's your favorite food?
Grass-fed beef.
Really?
In different forms.
I would not have expected that.
Well, because I wrote Ketotarian. Yes. But there's a sentence in that book where I talk about reintroducing grass-fed beef.
I'll read it.
Read it. Yeah. It's
because I've been beef and chicken and pork-less for 5 years.
Yeah, and that's fine. I mean, I have many pescatarian patients. I wrote Ketotarian for the pescatarian, plant-forward, vegetarian, vegan, who I wanted to talk about metabolic flexibility and nutrient density. So I wrote it for that reason. And I personally was plant-based for a long, long time. I talk about my journey in Ketotarian, but the grass-fed beef, just from a nutrient density standpoint and something that loves me back, my body back, it would be that.
And so you are located in Pittsburgh, but you're telehealth. Can people from all over the country work with you?
All over the world. We have patients all over the world. We've been doing telehealth for 15, 16 years. So anybody can reach out to us.
All right. Wonderful. Let's tell everybody about your books.
Yeah.
so they can find them.
Thank you so much. Everything's at drwillcole.com. So the links to my podcast is called The Art of Being Well is there. The books are there. The telehealth center is there. But the books are called Ketotarian, which is like a Mediterranean ketogenic way of eating, Inflammation Spectrum. A third one was Intuitive Fasting. And fourth was Gut Feelings.
Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe for more great podcast content. And follow at Vibrant Labs on Instagram to see what else we're up to. We'll see you next time.